ACC Preseason Media Day poll has Miami at number 3 behind Clemson and Florida State. First of all, Steve, do you think this is accurate? This preseason poll having Miami at number 3, is that accurate in your eyes?
Well, I think what's being held against Miami is the fact there are some questions about the coaching, whether it's fair or not, surrounding Mario Cristobal. Florida State's interesting. I was surprised that they were the runaway pick in a sense that offensively, look, Jordan Travis is among the best quarterbacks Florida State's ever had. His improvement from his freshman year to last year, I thought is as good as anything I've ever seen. When I first saw Jordan Travis, I said, there's no way this guy could be a full-time quarterback. And last season before the injury, he was probably going to be a Heisman finalist. You lose him. You lose your best running back. You lose both receivers to the National Football League, Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, and you lose a really good, versatile tight end, the transfer from South Carolina, Bell. What they do have is an NFL front 4. Even though they lost a couple of first-round draft choices, I think Patrick Payton, young man out of Miami Northwestern, has a higher ceiling than either of those guys. Darrell Jackson finally gets back onto the field. They're going to be very stout defensively. But again, is DJU the quarterback that over 12 to 13 games can take you all the way to the dance? Not sure about that. Clemson, again, I actually think Dabo takes too much heat. I get it. He's old-fashioned. He's set in his ways. But defensively, they have some real talent. That front 7 is going to be an issue again. But Cade Klubnik is on the spot. Second year in that offense with the new coordinator. What I don't think they have yet, although they have some young recruits coming in, they don't have that T. Wiggins, Nuke Hopkins, Sammy Watkins type of guy, even or Justin Ross the last 3 years. I think there's been a real talent decline on the outside. But they do bring in a 5-star receiver I think is being groomed to play right away. When it comes to Miami, and I read this in one of the magazines, and I cannot disagree with what they said based on last year. Does the sum equal the total of the parts? Because last year should have been a 9-win team, because when you're top 40, Smitty, in both offense and defense, which they were, generally that equates to 9 wins. They won 7, and we know what happened last year. But I've told this on a space yesterday with Miami fans. Don't be afraid to have high expectations. This has to be the year that Mario truly launches his whatever run he's going to have at Miami. It has to start being defined by this year. I think they're going all in.
Got you. It's exciting. If you're a Miami Hurricane fan, it's definitely an exciting year, and opportunities are right there in front of you. So we shall see.
By the way, Smitty, week 1 or week 0, Georgia Tech FSU in Dublin, Ireland. I'm going to have my Guinness ready. Georgia Tech is going to be a tough out every week. They bring most of their offensive line back. They bring back a quarterback in Haynes King that was incredibly improved. He was very impressive. And they bring back 2 receivers that were productive and a 1,000-yard rusher in Justin Haynes. That's a good team. Brent Key is going to be a guy that's going to be a thorn in the side. And with Florida State going through a lot of changes offensively, if you're Florida State or you're Georgia Tech, you would much rather play the Noles in week 0 than week 12. That's going to be a better game than people think.
Are you ready to call for the upset right now?
I am ready to put some money on the point spread. Not full upset.
This is interesting right here. I don't know. I think Syracuse is too high. New head coach. I get it.
Oh, it's Fran Brown mania.
Yeah, the hype's there. The hype's there, but the fact of the matter is he's having to reculture a place that's, starts off hot every year, especially under Dino, a good friend of mine, Dino Babers, and then fell off every year when that meat of the schedule hit. Wake Forest is a team that's been on the rise. Great job he does there. I would say they're probably going to be higher than this. And then Cal and Stanford in there is just asinine. It's so dumb that they're all the way over
Cal's
there.
Not bad, Coach. Cal, they have one of the better running backs in a lot, and their young quarterback, Mendoza, I actually like what I saw out of him. Miami goes there October 5th. I'm probably going to go to that game. They're going to be okay. They're not going to be terrible. I actually think Cal will be pretty serviceable.
And you got to, Mac Brown standing on business, Steve, 75 years old, saying, guess what? You guys vote us in every year this ranking this low, and we beat everybody's ass. It's funny how he said that in his press conference. Got to respect Mac Brown. Are they too low here?
They might be. He also said some things I thought may have been a veiled shot at Drake May when he said that I need better. You hyped up my quarterback and we got to do things. I was like, wow. It seemed like he was taking some veiled critiques at who he had.
I also heard some interesting things, Steve, on why their OC left to Wisconsin.
Phil Longo, yeah. Another team that I think is going to be a really good team year in, year out, because I'm a big fan. Brom at Louisville. They got resources. They take football seriously now. And Tyler Shuck, he might be an upgrade over who they had last year and when they went to the ACC title game. So Brom is the type of guy, you give him enough talent, and I think they will recruit at a higher level than he did at Purdue, where he pulled some upsets. Louisville's going to be a solid program for years to come.
What do you like NC State's positioning?
Well, they have Grayson McCall. And look, Dave Dorn's an underrated coach. Dave Dorn gets the most out of his team every single year. And I think the last 2 years they've won 9 games, beat Miami last year in kind of a slobber knocker. Grayson McCall, let's see if he can elevate his game and then elevate that team, because that's a team that is a dark horse in that ACC race.
Shout out to Dave Doran, Kansas City, Blue Valley North native. A lot of people thought he was going to take K-State or KU job since he is from Kansas area. Done a great job at NC State. Their D-line, in my opinion, separates them and keeps them in games every single year. Their D-line is really, really good every single year. He does a hell of a job with the defense and defensive line. Louisville, I agree. It's a tough top 5 or 6. Virginia Tech's on the rise. SMU's a sleeper. Georgia Tech's a tough out. Love what he's been doing there. Virginia, over the years, have just keeps falling. They've had some mishaps there. Duke, we saw the rise there for a while, and now he's
they lost Elko.
Lost him to A&M. So
that's a big loss. Look, Manny Diaz, our old coach, is there, and they brought in Malik Murphy.
And Pitt, Steve, just haven't been able to get over the hump.
Well, here's the problem with Pitt. Narduzzi wants to run an old school program about development, and I get that. But there's been a little bit of a talent drain. Look, Narduzzi's a really good, solid football coach. They've done some good stuff there. But I don't know in the NIL transfer portal era if they're the type of school that benefits on either end. Because think about it. A couple years ago, they lost Jordan Addison coming off a Bolitnikoff season. And then they're never a destination program for other blue chip talent. Right? They're always going to probably lose more guys than they get, unfortunately, even though they have an incredible tradition. So here's the thing. I read some stuff that there's some grumbling about Narduzzi. That's fine. Here's my question. Who can you get that's realistically available, and who is better?
Yeah, you're not going to get it. The most traveled team in the country is going to be Cal and Stanford, aren't they?
I saw the ACC road trip about Stanford. I've been watching those. Do you know on back-to-back weeks in late September, 1 week they go to Syracuse, right?
Yeah.
And then they go to Clemson.
So they go home.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is not like the NFL where you could take a team and
stay the night for a week, right?
Right. I mean, Stanford's a school. They're actually going to say, hey, asshole, you got some astrophysics tests to do, and you got to create the next Apple. You're going to be in class Monday. That's a tough trek to go back to back to back to back.
This is why the NCAA Non-Carrying Assholes of America is such a joke, because they preach all this academic stuff and all this integrity, and then they're going to allow college kids to go at 2 of the most academically hard entry schools in America, Cal and Stanford, to go across the country and play all East Coast teams. SMU will be the closest team they have to play in Texas. Other than that, look at that shit.
Yeah,
and I also don't like UCLA and SC having to go where they got to go.
Well, I mean, this is what they wanted. If I was UCLA or USC, I would have said, hey, guys, I would have told Dave Scott or Larry Scott, Larry, you're the Pac-12 commissioner. If you want to keep this conference around, you got to do so. It still boggles my mind that there really is no Pac-12 anymore, and that UCLA and USC are in a conference, which to me, when I think of Big Ten, I think of Middle America. I think of Mid-America. And now you're going to be playing Rutgers games at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Have fun.
It's such a joke. That's such a setup for failure, man, that I've ever seen. NCAA should be ashamed of themselves.
But is this an NCAA issue or a greed issue within the universities? I think the NCAA was fine with the multi-conference format. I don't blame the NCAA here, Coach. I really don't.
I think it's both, because the NCAA at the end of the day, though, has been the judge, jury, and executioner, and has started to allow these things to happen. And then what happens is when you allow so much to happen, eventually you're going to take an inch and then start expecting a foot. And then now look what it's done. It's become an absolute joke. Like, I believe the NCAA started it, though, and I think everyone else is just going to take it. And I don't know how this is going to. I'm curious to see what the NCAA does with the Michigan ruling that's apparently out, because that's going to tell sign on what the NCAA is still about. And are they still going to think that they're going to be able to do something to new kids, new coach after Harbaugh's departure and after what they did to them last year? You'll let kids, Steve, I said yesterday, you'll let kids transfer 4 times in 4 years, but you won't. You'll bitch about a coach stealing signs. Guess what? Steve Kim, when you leave Virginia Tech and go to Miami, guess what you're doing? You're giving the signs to your coach too. It's like it's the dumbest shit ever. It makes zero sense. If I'm a kid and I go to another school, I'm giving them the playbook. I'm giving them my D coordinator's hand signals. I'm giving them the offensive play calls. Like, it's no different. It's such a joke to me. It's a slap in the face.
Yes, sir. Steve, you gonna say something?
No, I think it says it all. You know, I was kind of thinking about if you're going to make this pro football, I was thinking about how do you curb the anarchy that is taking place with the NIL packaged in with the transfer portal. If this is going to become professional football, all right, and it's quasi-professional football now, I believe that the schools and the universities and every program needs to embrace the fact NILs are now basically contracts. They are. So basically make a multi-year contracts. And I would say there should be a rule. If you sign a multi-year NIL contract and you transfer before the expiration of that, number one, that school that takes that opposing player has to pay back the money of the NIL that's already been paid by the school.
I love it.
I think that's one way to stop the poaching. The other thing is, if you make it multi-year, players are going to think like, oh, God, I still got to fulfill this. Because there's no guarantee their NIL at the next school is going to be any better. The other thing is, I would still say your first transfer, you got to sit out a year.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you start doing that, I think kids will say, you know what, I'm just better off here. But those are just my ideas.
I love it. Those are some great ideas, Steve. I agree with everything you just said.